Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, on the net since 2000 and still going strong. If you feel like you're not getting the real news, if you feel like you're not connected spiritually, you have found your home. Maria covers a wide range of topics as only a snarky New Yorker can. Straight up, no chaser. No censorship, no corporate sponsors, thus true freedom of speech. Your subscription gives you unlimited access as a member of the smartest audience on earth. Relax and enjoy the education. Now here's Maria.
Good morning, world. Maria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to Awaken with Meria and Monnica. And we're going to wake you and shake you up this morning. So I'm happy to have my friend and co-host Monica Sepulveda with me. Good morning, Monica.
Good morning, Maria. I'm ready. I'm stoked about today's topic.
Well, today's topic is going to be all over the place for a little while. I wanted to start the show with a question I got from one of my listeners about her daughter. And it's interesting because a lot of mothers right now are really worried about their daughters, especially daughters in relationships. But this one isn't about a relationship. Okay, the girl her name is Mia. Her birth date is March 16th, 2005. So she's only 14. Okay,
Wow.
And the note I got was, my 14-year-old daughter's been vegan for 18 months. She's smart and well-researched at all times. But this winter she's been sick for weeks on end, and she can't seem to shake off bugs. She doesn't want to give up her animal welfare beliefs, but I'm worried about her. And what advice would you give? And before you look at it, I did want to say, I have been a vegetarian for 20 years. And the same reason as this woman's daughter, for animal welfare beliefs. And also because I finally realized I had to stop polluting my body. But here's my advice just on a vegan or vegetarian bend without, psychically looking at it. There are a lot of people that claim to be vegetarian, but their diet is not a healthy diet, okay? You could eat potato chips and call yourself a healthy vegetarian. And donuts. It's interesting because the very first vegetarian I ever met was a gal who was wearing a size 26. And I couldn't understand. I said to her, how can you be so heavy if you're a vegetarian? But then I looked at what she ate. And that was all I needed to know. Her house was, it was like walking into a candy store from Willy Wonka. And donuts, you name it, everything you can't even believe. And even when I went to dinner with her, she would actually order 2 entrees.
What?
Okay, yeah, I know, it was pretty scary, let alone expensive. But besides eating well, and if this young woman is smart and well-researched, the suggestion I had given her mom was take her to a nutritionist, because a lot of vegetarians or vegans are missing certain minerals or vitamins. And it's always recommended that they take B12. As a matter of fact, it's important for anybody over 50, no matter what your diet, to take B12 because your body doesn't make it anymore.
I take it every day.
Right. So me, it was...
I take the sublinguals, though, because I like it to melt under my tongue. It goes right into your system that way.
Right. Well, they have that. They have them in drops, too. But, I didn't look at her to see why she was sick all winter. And I guess winters are pretty severe in Australia. But I wanted to know if you wanted to take a look at her first, and then I would take a look and see what I say for her, too.
What you said at the very beginning, I'm feeling that that's part of the case. First of all, her body kind of went into a shock, and it's like trying to adjust, but yet she's putting in the wrong foods. And so that's causing her body to get all confused. And I see problems with the gastrointestinal area. I see a lack of fiber, and there's a lot of acid in her stomach. She needs to go on, taking aloe vera juice, start off with a half a cup a day and then an ounce every day with some slippery elm and marshmallow root, plus also omega-3, 6, and 9. And that'll help her considerably. I also feel toxic in the liver, so I would take milk thistle if I were her, and just clean out her body. She needs to really hydrate and just flush out her body for a good 3 days. and then get on this particular protocol in order to keep herself healthy. But she's got to make a better selection with foods. I keep seeing her eating on the run is what I just heard in my head. So eating on the run usually means fast food.
Right. Well, I don't even know. When they say it's a food product, that means it's not food. It's either food, food or it's not. And for people out there, if you want to detox your liver, the best way is go get a bottle of, and I always suggest people get vegan formulas when they buy vitamins because they have less garbage in them. To buy a whole bottle of milk thistle, take it the way it's instructed till the bottle's empty. And that usually does the trick. But looking at her, I do see that she's going like 100 miles an hour, which is normal for a 14-year-old. But I also see that, this is not a disease. I don't see that this is something she has to have. But, becoming, a vegetarian or a vegan or, whatever you want to do, whichever form of it, it takes a lot of research. It takes time. Luckily for anybody listening to my show, I have a million shows in here with top vegan doctors, especially Dr. Bernard and Dr. McDougall. So many different vegetarian books on my site. Melanie Joy is a great vegetarian book on why we eat cows and not dogs, on carnism, the World Peace Diet. I mean, the list goes on, and it does take an adjustment. For me, it took 2 years as a vegetarian for my thyroid to heal itself. And after being on medication for a dozen years, when my doctor told me my thyroid was working, I didn't need medication anymore, I told him the only thing I did was change my diet. And he just ignored it. But, that was 20 years ago, and I still don't take medication. So it takes time. Everything takes time. But I also see that some of her problems were emotional. So her emotional problems created some of her illnesses. It kind of wore down her immune system. Some of it was, just feeling out of place. That's what I'm getting. Feeling out of place. Maybe not accepted by the kids around her. A little bit of bullying. So she had some emotional issues over the winter as well.
Yeah, and she eats out of emotional, in order to, food is a sedative, especially carbohydrates are sedatives, so it's very easy to get addicted to the wrong ones. And I agree with you. I was watching a motion picture as you were talking, and I saw her around her kids, and I heard the word peer pressure. And with the emotional issues, it's very, very, it takes a while to break that. It's like giving up cocaine or heroin, because you have to cleanse out the system from all the carbs and the sugars that are in the body, since we know that carbs turn into sugar and that turns into fat. So I believe that, it would help her to get some counseling. But as a 14-year-old, she's doing the best she can, but she's making bad decisions. And so I feel that it's hard to confront someone like this and tell them something, because I also feel obstinate with her. And if I were the mother, I would immediately just say, because I've done this so many times and I've given this advice to so many people that always say thank you. Since I've been doing this work for 47 years, I always tell the mother or whoever it is to visualize their child in their mind's eye and then ask for the higher power of love, or whatever you want to call that power, to intervene and to enter her child's mind, to give her new thinking, new thoughts, and to give her love and feelings of self-worth. And you only ask one time, but then you do this for 27 days, and the last 26 days you just give thanks that it is done. You only need to say this once to God, because that's why God's God gets it the first time. So by doing that and visualizing her healthy, this is how a lot of people have transformed their loved ones. Because if you talk to them, it goes in one ear and out the other. But when you send telepathic thoughts, and visualize the face and ask for a higher power to intervene, what happens is that person will change after 1 month, because they'll think that the idea came from themselves. It goes into the subconscious, but then after 27 repetitions, it goes into the conscious mind.
Well, that's good stuff. Well, the other thing is, I had a conversation this morning with a mother, and she and her daughter both have their Reiki, but sometimes we forget to use what we have. So, people can also send long distance Reiki to that person.
Yeah.
And just try to look at the situation, from a different angle, because, a lot of times our thoughts aren't even our own. Okay, they could just be we're picking up thoughts from somebody else, thoughts that are getting implanted in our heads, especially when they're negative. You have to really stop and say, is this coming from me, or is this coming from somewhere else?
Yeah, the key is to stay out of the left brain, because that's the danger zone. And when you listen to intuition, that comes from the heart and it feels right. I always say when you make a decision, if it feels right, that means it is right. If you're thinking about something, that's usually left brain, which is storing history and information. So I know, like, because of what happened to me about a month ago, thinking foreign thoughts absolutely do pop into your head, and I was buying into them. And that was me, the person who never allows that to happen. It happened to me. It just snuck up on there. It's like it was, well, you know how terrible it was.
Right.
It's gone now. You have to speak your voice, too, and just say, and I use profanities a lot. And I just said, get the fuck out of my head, you asshole. I said, you're of a lower form and you're not invited, not even into my head, in my home, or anywhere near my neighborhood. You stay away, because I trust love. And I felt them scurrying away like three little entities, like blurs, and they left. But we have the right to choose. That's what we're here for. I just think that this 14-year-old is not really spiritual either. I think she's lacking that.
Right.
So you can't be the mother and preach to the person, their child, to become more spiritual, because they don't get it. So because I've had a lot of resistance from people that say, I don't believe in God, I go, yeah, I get it, because it's usually related to religion. How about, do you believe in love? And they say, well, yeah, that's good. I go, okay, then there's a source of love that created everything. Why don't you plug into that source of love and let it guide you? And then they seem more accepting and they're more open to doing it.
Right. Well,
so every morning I plug my heart into the source of love, and I said, thank you for filling me with your white light, the pure love, which pushes away all things that are negative. And that seems to help, because I'll tell you, I had an obstinate family member, a sibling, who would never accept that at all. He goes, I don't even want to hear about it. And then when I said, how about source of love? He goes, yeah, I like that. And guess what? It changed his whole life.
Well, words matter. And sometimes you truly do have to speak to the other person's listening. You have to speak in their language.
Yeah.
I've always been able to do that. But for some others, it's a little more difficult. But, talking about difficulty, you and I come from a totally different generation than what these young people are dealing with today. And, there's nothing normal anymore, old-fashioned, about the way dating, courtships, relationships goes. And yet there are a lot of women, girls, young women, who want that old-fashioned courting, who want to get engaged, who want to get married, who want to have a good relationship. But what I'm finding is a lot of these young people today, they meet up on these different sites. Sometimes it's just to hook up. There's no more chivalry. There's no more, real dating, planning, let me take you out. There's no more wooing. And on top of that, a lot of these young men are alcoholics. And we're talking about young men in their 20s. So they bring alcohol into the relationship. And these girls, and I'm sure it works the other way around. I'm just talking from the majority of my experience. And these girls make excuses and try to put up with it and do workarounds.
Well, here's what happens is that yesterday I watched a special that 50% of Americans that get married are getting married because they met somebody online. I mean, it's like that didn't happen before. They used to meet people face to face, and online I find that there's a lot of liars, and I did that about maybe 10, 15 years ago, and I said, no, thank you. And they're like emotionally damaged, a lot of these guys. As soon as you just say, I don't think it's a fit, they start screaming at you, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, click. But one of the things I wanted, if you would allow me a moment to explain this.
Sure.
You can find out about any person, and I would say this, stop freaking texting new people. Get on the freaking phone and listen to their voice, intonations, and hesitations, or whatever they pause. When you ask them 3 questions, you can find out in 3 questions whether that person's right for you or not, because You're going to be eliciting the most important thing that allows couples to have very long relationships. I'm talking lifelong relationships, because it's not what they have in common. When people meet people, they always talk about their hobbies. That's not enough. Oh, you like to ski? I like to ski. I like to go camping. And then they get together over stupid things like that without even knowing their character or values. So these questions address character and values, because I found in research of 47 years that the people that stay together have the same character traits and the same values, which is the most important thing. What are values? Integrity, loyalty, respect, friendship, good communication, similar spiritual values. And then you can add to that, I have a seventh, they must love animals. I'm not gonna date someone that kills animals. That's a deal breaker. So those are the 6 values, the top 6 values. And to find out whether they have those values, they won't even have a clue that you're eliciting their values by asking them 3 simple questions. So if people have a pen and paper, write this down or re-listen to the show once again. The first thing you want to ask a person if you want to find out their values is, number 1, do you have a lot of friends? If the person says no, that's a red flag, because when you have lifelong friendships and people that you hang out with, that means that they trust you. You don't lie to them. You're friends to them. You're loyal. You respect them. You communicate with them. You make plans with them. And that shows you that that person's honorable. If they say, well, no, I'm mostly by myself, that's a red flag, because they probably are liars, and they probably cheat, and they probably lie, and they betray, and they're not respectful. So you can immediately find out, like the first 5, just with that one question, and they have no idea that that's what you're looking for. The second question is, what's been the most difficult thing that you've done in life that's like a challenge, and how did you overcome it? Well, if they pause, what do you mean overcome? That lets you know that, number 1, they're not solution-oriented. Number 2, they're probably not very spiritual, because people that are spiritual seem to be solution-oriented. So if they start name-calling, well, I worked for this fucking asshole who just screwed me over, and I lost my job. And anytime they play the victim role or they call people names, bad sign, run. If they start talking about how they resolved something and how they learned from it, that lets you know that they have a clue about how the world works, and that they take accountability for things that happen and they learn from it. And that lets you see that they have a level of spiritual knowledge. So again, look for those signs. The third question is, what did you learn from your last relationship that you would do differently in a new relationship? Again, if they go back and they start talking about the ex and what a C word, see you next Tuesday.
All right.
Or that she cheated on me, blah, blah. Oh, it takes 2 people to cheat, because a marriage has 2 people in it, and one person cheats because they take a path of least resistance instead of fixing the problem. But if, again, they start name-calling her, oh, she was such a bitch to me, and she was this and that, again, an inability to take accountability or to be responsible for the part that you played. You probably didn't pay attention to her or him. And so the name calling, again, if it comes up, run, because they'll be calling you names in the future. Secondly, if they say, well, we parted company because we grew apart. She took one direction, I took the other direction, but we're still friends and we communicate with each other and we have a good relationship with our kids or whatever. So when, again, name calling bad, friendship and understanding and getting along is good. So 3 simple questions, and they'll have no clue that you found out about the 7 levels or 6 levels of character and values. And it's amazing how many people have thanked me because I gave them that particular bit of advice. It's so simple.
And it's good
but
advice.
We always look for things in common. So the next thing on your list would be things in common. It's not at the top of the list.
All
and then
right.
after that, look for physical traits that you're attracted to. But most people flip it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. Hormones are the enemy of man.
And here's what the mistake that I found that most, because I really do counsel a lot of young females that are getting in relationships. They don't even look to see that they're attracting who they are, not what they want. So if you have let's say, for a female-male relationship. If you're attracting a man who's inconsistent and not there for you, basically what the universe is showing you is that you're not being there for yourself and you're very inconsistent. You're looking for someone on the outside of you to fulfill your needs or to make you feel whole. Just like that movie, Show Me the Money. Oh, you complete me? I wanted a barf.
All right.
Nobody completes us. We have to be the cake and let the person be the icing, but not the cake. So what I find is that because people are on their best behavior when you first meet them, we usually like maybe up to the first 6 months, we tend to fall in love with their best behavior, but it's not real. Then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they're like, a person gets lazy, they stop doing all these things. Well, because it was fake. Don't give your heart away at the beginning of any relationship. Just because a person's making you feel good, it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So give yourself a good year with a person before you open your heart and give it to them. The responsibility of the mate is to take care of the heart and vice versa. So a lot of women fall in love because of all the distractions, of bringing you flowers and doing this and doing that, and because they're trying to lure you in. Hello, and once they have you, they get lazy. So what you want to do is do not give up your heart. Do not say the words, I love you, and especially the ones that start really quickly. I always say that which starts quickly ends quickly, because that person has nothing going for themselves. So they're looking for someone to make them feel better. And when they're in relationship with you and they don't feel better because there's actually other reasons why they're not feeling good, then they're going to dump you and find someone else, because then they get addicted to that rush that releases all those endorphins and pheromones and stuff. They get addicted to that, but they can't fall into love, deep into the heart. So that is short-lived. And never get involved with anyone that's going through a divorce, because they're going to use you to heal themselves, and then they're going to dump you. Classic.
Right. Well, I mean, everybody gets that, what I call Mr. In-Between. But, if...
Miss Right.
Right, Mr. Right Now.
Miss Right Now.
Well, when I look back, and as you know, I wrote a relationship book. It didn't take me long. Everything I've learned in, over 60 years of living through my own relationships, my sister's relationships, my clients' relationships. And I really put it together in Relationships Cutting to the Chase, because if everybody could read the, 60 pages, it's all it takes, they would have healthier relationships. And a lot of what you mentioned in your 3 questions is part of the 30 questions I have in my book. I often, I tell people, if you're going to fall in love, you're going to fall out of love. Love is something that builds. It's not something you fall into. That's a sexual attraction.
And then you have to start loving yourself first, because we don't attract what we want. We attract who we are. So if we love ourselves and take care of ourselves and put ourselves at the top of the priority list, which most people don't, what happens is that you bring in a loving person who's going to reflect who you are. The other people that say, oh, I attracted this person who started beating on me. Well, where do you beat up on yourself? And then he charms you away, called the honeymoon period, and you accept that without changing who you are. The key is to learn from it. Nothing is lost unless we lose the lesson. So, I went through my people-pleasing phases, which is a total lose-lose situation, because I was so insecure. I wanted people to like me, so I was pleasing people all the time as growing up. And my mother said, what are you doing? Tell your aunts to F off, just tell them to go to hell, because you're not their slave. I used to do hair all the time, and so they wanted me to do their hair every weekend without paying me. And I used to do it like a fool. So my mom said, you don't owe anybody anything. If they ask you for something, just say no. And even if it's disrespectful towards your aunt, they have to respect you too. So she taught me that from age 12. It took a while to learn, because I needed to overcome my insecurities of not feeling worthy. And that worthiness comes all the way from my childhood. So I get it. A lot of people go through that. They don't feel good about themselves. But the number one rule in this incarnation is love of self, then send it out to the planet. And how do you love yourself? That's a general statement. You treat yourself the way you treat other people.
Treat yourself the way you want to be treated by other people.
Well, exactly.
I had a conversation with a young woman at my gym, and she was really rushing through her routine. And I said to her, why are you moving so fast? You're only going to hurt yourself. Well, I have this to do, and I have to go see this for my daughter, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. And I said to her, you're in here for yourself. I said, all that other garbage can wait. If you've got to be able to say, I'm going to give myself an hour and everything else can wait. And you know what? She was so relieved just to hear that, because there she was rushing through where I knew she was going to end up hurting herself because she had to do for other people. And you know what? I taught my kids from when they were very little, if mommy's not happy, nobody's happy. So you have to put yourself first. There's no reason to be all rushing around and taking care of everybody else. But like I said to her, you know, we find it's easier to love other people than love ourselves.
And that's why you want to treat yourself the way you treat others. And people, write this down, listeners, write this down. I'm not a human doing, I'm a human being. Right.
And I also find that it's easier for them to forgive other people than to forgive themselves.
Yeah, like we keep punishing ourselves that way, and what does that attract to us? I mean, every word we speak, every thought we have, every emotion we have is all manifested. The beauty of this planet is it has the ability to reflect back to you 100-fold of exactly what we're doing to ourselves. It always goes back to us who are the co-creators of our reality. And the one constant is that reality, quote unquote, which is the illusion, is the one that changes, but it changes based on when we change. So if we start to connect the dots, that the inside creates the outside, rather than, I'd only be happy if I had a man in my life, or I'd only be happy if I had a girlfriend, or I had a good job, or I made more money. That's BS. We have to feel worthy. We have to feel good. We have to feel prosperous. We have to feel love for self. And then don't rush into relationships. You know, the key is, I always give people an exercise which works every single time. And the exercise is this. Give your life a rating from 1 to 10. When I first did this in 1989, I gave my life a rating of a 4. And yet I was on national television, all the talk shows back in the day, and I was getting all this attention, and I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't fulfilled. So I gave my life a 4. And then I wrote down why, and my thoughts and my feelings about myself, and all, it came to that. So I was succeeding in spite of it, because I know that I have a path in life, but still I needed to be happy. Otherwise, you can be a hypocrite if you're teaching all this stuff and you're not walking your talk. So after I was done with that script, then I wrote a new one. I said, my life is a 10, looks like this. Then I wrote down in detail, and it took me an hour to write down in detail what my life looked like as a 10. I had moved, I lived by the ocean. I had attracted, get this, I attracted the man I wrote down, 6'2", brown hair, blue-eyed Capricorn. Yeah, he came into my life all right, but I should have been more specific because he was an alcoholic. So I should have written down alcohol-free, no drug addicts, no mental, emotional problems, you know, and I didn't get that specific, and I should have. So I learned that everything that I wrote on that list, all of it, within 1 year's time, manifested, because I started looking at my life as a 10 versus the 4, and I noticed the difference is my attitude. I was worried too much in the 4. I was fearing too much, and I had too much self-doubt, feelings of undeservability. So let's look at this. Fear is an absence of love. That's huge. Worry is the opposite of faith. That's huge. Feelings of undeservability and doubt means that we don't feel good about ourselves, so therefore we're not going to receive anything. You have to raise your vibration. So then I looked at my life as a 10, and I saw how confident I was, that I was filled with love. I had no fear. I was bold. I trusted, and I connected with my higher power. And everything came to pass. So the question that you ask yourself, am I willing to do whatever it takes to go from a 4 to a 10? I said, yes. What am I willing to do in order to go from a 4 to a 10? Well, I changed all the internal stuff. The stuff on the outside didn't have to change. I had to change it inside. Third question was, what if I don't do any of this? Then I lifted up the script that had the 4, and there was my future. And I said, no fucking way. I'm going to this 10, and I did everything necessary, and I made the changes on the inside, and it manifested everything, except the man who was 6'2", blue-eyed Capricorn, had an alcohol problem, but I got rid of him in 3 months.
Oh, well, okay. Well, you know, I often tell people, you know, and whether you're male or female, because, you know, I have just as many male clients as I do female, make a list of what you want in a partner. And when you meet somebody, don't deviate from your list. But people tend to overlook, well, he doesn't have this, that, the other thing, or she doesn't have this, that, the other thing, but I'll go with it anyway. thinking somehow through some miracle you're going to be able to change someone else. Listen, you can't change or fix anyone else. That has to be done by them. So
they're also reflecting a part of who you are. So if you want them to change, you change first. I learned a long time ago that when we change, the people around us change, and that was like I tested it, and that was right on the money.
Right, and if you don't,
I had a lady that came in. She was a client back in the 1980s, and her life really worked. And I didn't even know why she came to see me, but I know now because there was something she had to teach me. Her life was working so well. I said, "How do you do it?" She says, "When you take care of you, you take care of everybody else because they all change. Everything takes care of itself when you put yourself first." And it was such a simple thing. But I realized she was right. When I took care of myself, the people around me started to change. Or they left and new people came.
Right. Either they change or you change them. One or the other. Monica, we need to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Relationships. You hear a lot of experts talk endlessly about having a successful relationship, but do they? Meria has combined her years of experience, spirituality, knowledge, wit, and wisdom about relationships into one small, concise, useful book, Relationships Cutting to the Chase. The most important relationship of all is the relationship you have with yourself. If you're not in a loving, healthy relationship with yourself, you'll continue to have problems in all types of relationships. Meria shows you how to have one, and great relationships of all sorts in her latest book. You can find the book at Meria.net. That's Meria.net under Maria's books. Stop suffering and enjoy a happy life with fulfilling relationships. You may decide to buy one for everyone you know. Order your copy now at Meria.net. Now back to this fascinating show.
Welcome back to Awaken with Meria and Monnica, and I guess we're talking about relationships today.
Yeah, that's the flow.
You know, I don't ever claim to be a saint, and I've had plenty of relationships, and one time in my life I actually sat down and was honest with myself. I reviewed every man I had been with, and what I realized was I had a pattern to the type of men. I had a type, and it wasn't a healthy type. So it ended up that even though I was married 3 times, they all became the same man. So what happens is if you don't recognize your pattern, say you continue to draw alcoholics to yourself, or you continue to draw, abusers to yourself, you have to at some point take a look at, why am I doing this? What is there about me? And at least first realize that you have that pattern. It's like, I'm sure you know, when you have sexual abusers in the family, it's a pattern that goes generation to generation until somebody breaks that pattern. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same thing in relationships. You have to look at, if you keep getting the same kind of relationship, you have to look at what's attracting me to this. I have a pattern here. How do I break the pattern?
Well, here's when you start. It usually starts in your childhood. And I was attracting alcoholics and cocaine addicts because my dad was an alcoholic. And because he was an alcoholic, he was functioning, so he'd go to work every day, but at night he'd get smashed, and he would be mean. So that's where my self-worth issues came in, and I realized that I never actually forgave my father. And when I did, everything changed for me. I stopped attracting these people that were alcoholics. It was simply pointing me to the direction of its origin. The genesis was my growing up and my father. So after my dad passed, he helped me more than anybody else because he realized what he had done. Not a very nice person, being drunk, but that was my normal, you know. And so we tend to attract what we see as children, and we think that our parents are like God and they know it all. And even if it's dysfunctional, that becomes the normal. So I continued the pattern until I finally went to the origin or genesis of where it started. And once I forgave that and let that go, then I was able to heal.
Right. So your parent doesn't have to be, your parent or whoever it was that damaged you, doesn't really necessarily have to be alive for you to give them forgiveness. You can just choose to do it.
I did it after my dad passed.
Right. Sometimes it's easier to finish things off when they're not here anymore.
And he's done so many things to help me. Meria, it's been unbelievable what he's done to help me. I love my dad. Every morning I say hello to him. He died November 3rd, 2012, so we're coming up on his 7th year. And he's done so much to help me. And every time I think about him, something always manifests, like a piece of paper when he wrote something really sweet to me. All of a sudden I'm looking through drawers and there it is. So he's still connecting because he's showing me the nice things he did for me.
Right.
And I didn't even know I kept those things.
Well, there's two types of people. Some who just focus on the negative and some who just focus on the positive and ignore the negative. But everybody has to realize we all have that inside of us.
And you know what else happened, Meria, is I realized, I thought, there's got to be a reason why this man manifested in my life, and why did he single me out? I did some research and meditation and found out that I actually was a parent to him in a previous incarnation, and I was horrible to him. So I actually asked for his forgiveness as well. It was like balancing of the karmic wheel. So we're not all just victims.
Right.
Sometimes it's about our karmic wheel that needs to be balanced.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes, even in a relationship reading, a lot of times I'll pick up past lives between the two. And the past life was not necessarily a romantic one. And it maybe sometimes it wasn't a good one. Well, maybe it was a good one, but they died too young. They wanted to come back and experience growing old together. There's so many variables. Yeah. But sometimes, in situations, there is no karma. People tend to draw more karma to themselves when they go off their own path. When they get involved in things that were none of their business in the first place, or, choose to just go with the flow instead of trusting their intuition, and then they draw new karma to themselves. Because a lot of times I'll look and I'll see in relationship spreads that these two people weren't meant to be sexually relating to each other. They came in to work together or to be friends together. So, it's a very interesting line to cross when you go from friendship to a sexual relationship, or if it starts out as a purely sexual relationship. It always amazes me when the people realize they have nothing in common.
Well, that's the whole key, is that it usually has to do with their values and character, and then the things that are in common are usually like hobbies, which don't matter. It's really about what's on the inside. And I found that with relationships and past lives, like you said, they weren't necessarily romantic, but maybe they were inappropriate affairs, that kind of thing, and they really wanted to explore this time around. But yet, because everybody has their own upbringing and baggage and stuff, and they don't unpack, they keep pushing their fears into the next relationship as if it's that person's fault. So therefore, they damage a new one also that could have some potential,
right?
Because we don't unpack. And we have to do that ourselves. Anytime we're looking for someone to make us happy, step back. That's our job, not their job. So, can you imagine having the burden of making someone feel happy?
No, it's too much. Listen, I see that with some of my closest friends in their relationships and whatnot, and how unfair that is. When I was married, one of the most important things you said today, and I want to bring it back so you also don't forget it, is when you ask those three questions, the number one to me out of what you said is, do you have a lot of other friends?
Yeah.
Because when you meet somebody who's a loner, and they don't have their own friends, they don't have their own outside interests, that means they're going to put all that on you.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're going to feel responsible for somebody else's happiness, and no one is responsible for someone else's happiness.
Right, exactly. And a lot of women, again, they get charmed by all the flash and the distractions,
Exactly. Listen, my last husband was like that. What are we going to do this weekend? Why don't you call this couple, see if they want to do this or that? And you know what? One day I just had enough, Monica. And I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm not your entertainment center. If you want an entertainment center, go to Sears and buy one. So even though you find it flattering in the beginning, you don't see that the red lights are flashing all over the place, that you're going to be it. You're going to be the chief cook, bottle wash, sex partner, friend partner, drinking partner, this, that, arranging all the vacations, this, and where's your freedom? That's not a relationship.
That's correct.
So let's go back to, I know you love John Bradshaw's work as much as I do.
I do.
And one of the things I remember when he was talking about relationships, he said, you don't want to be in a relationship where one person is looking at the other person. That's not healthy. You don't want a relationship where you're both looking at each other. That's not healthy. He said a healthy relationship is standing side by side looking forward together.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, that was one of the best ones that he came out with. And I don't know whether a lot of other people in the audience understood that or not, but it made total sense to me, because if you're not happy, you're going to attract somebody just like you to yourself.
Absolutely. That's just the way of law of cause and effect works. I mean, it comes down to that. It's law. This world functions in cause and effect. So whatever vibrational frequency that we're broadcasting is what we're going to receive back. I mean, if you're turning to channel 4 on your TV set, you're not going to see what's on channel 5 unless you turn it to channel 5, and that's a frequency. We all have our own personal frequencies, and if we're vibing at a low frequency, we're going to attract that. There's no way possible. It's impossible to attract a different frequency than what we're broadcasting.
Right. Well, years ago, decades ago, I was picked up an old Cosmo magazine. I don't even know if Cosmo's still in print or not.
I don't know.
But they had this big, long, they used to do their surveys and whatnot in there. And they had an article, and it was like a test to ask you what you think the number one aphrodisiac was for both men and women. And
I don't even know. What is it?
Well, that's why I'm bringing it out, because it's got to be like a 40-year-old article. Self-confidence.
Well, say that again. I was laughing.
The answer is self-confidence.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When you give off that independent self-confidence, it's like a drug walking down the street to people.
Mm-hmm. And the person that has a lot of confidence, they attract a person, but then if that person is insecure, their partner, they're going to try to control you and take away that self-confidence because they feel threatened by it. So a person can be super, super nice, but yet not have a lot of confidence. Now, how does that happen? Maybe the person that has a lot of confidence is a caregiver and they like to fix people. I find this a lot with a lot of gay relationships, but there's always one that likes to heal or fix the other person and forget about themselves, and then they get dumped. Right. Why? Because they're abandoning themselves, So, yeah, self-confidence is one that brings in, but you have to have a person who's empowering. When I think about, like, Stephen Curry and Aisha Curry, he plays for the Warriors, but he also is now releasing his first film called Emmanuel. It's about the shooting that took place at a temple in a church, and it comes out on the 17th of June, and they both, this next week, have television shows that are coming out as well. She's all about cooking. She owns restaurants, and his is about competing, and they're on ABC next week. So I really look up to Stephen Curry as a good role model because he lives a spiritual life first. Every time he makes a basket, he touches his heart and points up, which means from my heart to my higher power, or God. So I like that about him, and now that he's doing film and television, it's like, wow. And these two have known each other since high school, so clearly they were meant to be. I like the fact that neither one owns the other person. They have 3 children, but she does her thing, he does her thing, and she's super confident. I love watching Aisha Curry. So if you want to see some good stuff coming out of these people that are spiritually based, because, again, people keep thinking we're human beings having a spiritual experience instead of a spiritual being having a human experience. They get that mixed up. And once you start acknowledging the spirit of who we are, truly, because that's the one that lives on forever, this body leaves, then we have our priorities correct. And I always say, why did I come here? Well, I know now why I came here. Right. But the key is to help people connect the dots of how thoughts are things, words become things, emotions become things, and the reality is the one that changes. And that's why David calls it the illusion, because that's exactly what it is.
Right. And of course, I want to get back to make sure the thoughts you're having are your thoughts and not implants from discarnate spirits or somebody you pass by on the street. I often tell people, if wake up in a happy mood and you go run outside for a couple of chores or whatever, and you come back and you're in a terrible mood, somebody's corded onto your energy, and you need to know how to shake that off.
And part of that's being empathetic too. You gotta, oh, get this. I always loved John Lennon, but after he passed away, he gave me a message and he said, life is what happens to you while you're busy doing other things. And so this lady, I found a lady who was channeling John Lennon, and I thought, well, okay, I'm going to check her out to see if she's for real or not. So I invited her to my house, and I invited 20 people, and because she was local, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit here and say nothing. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, she said, he has a message for you. And she actually wrote a book, and that message is in the book about John Lennon and the challenge she did. She says, he told me to tell you, life is what happens to you while you're busy doing other things. And I just smiled because I thought, that's exactly what I asked him to say. Exactly. So then he told me later, because I realized how easy it is to connect with John Lennon. He also said, if you're going to go out, he said, wear an invisible hat over your head so that nobody attacks your thoughts. And I was like, why didn't I remember that? I remembered it after that thing happened last month. He also said, visualize that there is a dimmer switch inside you, especially if you're an empath. And he said, a dimmer switch like the ones on the wall, like when you dim a light.
Right, and just
and I said,
turn
okay.
it
He
down.
said, put it in your solar plexus. And he said, turn it all the way down to 2 anytime you go out anywhere so that you're not picking up other people's crap. And I thought, wow, it's been a long time, but I have a great big huge picture of him. I mean, we're talking like 2 feet high by 1.5 feet wide. It's in my hallway, and I've always had that picture because I felt so connected to him. Uh-huh. He gives you, if you connect to him, he will give you guidance like you wouldn't believe.
Well,
amazing.
And then, or if it's somebody like you, they'll just tell you, and you can tell us.
Well, I like communicating with people that have passed on. That's like one of my favorite things to do.
Right. Well, yes, that is your specialty. We'll call it your specialty. People
it.
always ask me, do you talk to the dead? And I said, listen, most of the dead I know. I didn't want to talk to them when they were alive. So,
well, my clients get a lot of satisfaction because I tell them things that are so random that there's no way I would know.
I know.
Makes you feel comfortable.
I know. Every now and then a spirit will show up in the reading, and I don't channel like you do. But when they come through, it's unmistakable. So I have to give the message.
Oh, you have to.
I just have to.
Responsibility.
But you know what? It's a very healing thing for the recipient, and I mean, I was so happy for this one woman that I was crying with her. And I don't cry, okay? I don't cry, and I'm like, what the hell is happening to me? How powerful is this being that I'm sitting here crying?
That's weird when it happens,
I know, but I like to be more effective for people.
One thing I can tell your listeners is if you did have a traumatic childhood, read John Bradshaw's book called The Child Within, because he explains every need a child has from the time they were born, every single month until age 5. And I realized as I was reading it, I didn't get those needs met at all. I mean, I was beaten a lot. So, when you're beaten, you have absolutely no self-esteem. And yet I became very successful all through school because I needed to prove to myself that I was worthy of things. So I entered beauty pageants and won and did all this cheerleading crap, and it's like, now I have my 50-year class reunion coming up. I don't really want to go because back then, although I had all this popularity and stuff, that's my past, and I was coming from a different place. And I noticed that when you go to these reunions, people they go back to the way they acted back then.
I know.
It's like, so what, did you peak in high school?
Right. Well, listen, I know a lot of people that have peaked in high school, which is really sad. But that's just the way it is. But I would never go to a reunion. I didn't like them then, and I still wouldn't like them. So there you have it. I mean, for me, high school was a nightmare. Okay.
Yeah, they stopped growing, and I have nothing in common with them. My life as it is now is completely different. However, one thing I did teach the sports team, the coaches and stuff, I'd work with the teams, I teach them how to visualize. Visualize the game before you go out there and play it. And that's the way it works. The brain will store and visualize the entire game, and then your body follows and does whatever it takes in order to match what you just visualized.
There's so
you can
many.
Do that with anything, by the way.
And you can do that with relationships. This young lady I was speaking with this morning, I said to her, I know you know about the medicine wheel, because I taught her. I said, what I want you to do in her relationship, I said, is transform into the hawk and take an overview. Stop looking at it from your perspective. Fly above it and look at the whole thing. And
I love that.
I said, and you'll know what to do.
Yeah.
And
You're
also,
absolutely right.
people have to realize, I say it as a joke, but, most of my jokes have a lot of depth to them.
Mm-hmm.
A relationship, settling is something a lawyer and a house does. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something people should do in a relationship. I'd rather have a bad relationship than no relationship.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
what is, there's so many
Phew.
people like that. And I look at people, and I've heard people literally tell me, I'm sure you have too, I'm just staying with him or her till something better comes along.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, everybody, nothing better's coming along as long as your energy
Nothing.
is tied to someone else's energy, okay?
And you haven't changed.
Exactly. And that's the most dishonest thing you can do to anybody, okay? Is to
Oh
just
yeah.
be there because you're biding time or waiting for somebody better to come along. It's never going to happen. Number one, you're going to draw the same thing to yourself. And, if your energy's tied to one person, there's no way that another person's energy is going to be able to reach you.
And
People
then
don't
I shock
realize
them by
that.
saying, and guess what? You're no better because you're using that person. And usury is not a good idea. That's
Right.
not love. You're using a person because they're either helping you financially or making you not feel lonely. It's like it's not their job. And what you're doing is despicable by using another human being because you need them. Now, that's not called love. And if you're waiting for someone else to rescue you, guess what? The person that's coming next is probably going to be worse.
Right. Go back to the 1960s and buy, I forget the author's name, the girl who wrote that Cinderella Complex. Get yourself a copy of that book and read it because there's nobody coming to save you. There's a great country song. I'm trying to think of the guy who sings it. But basically, it's a fabulous song. I'm not your man. I can't be your man in shining armor. I can just love you.
Yeah.
And people need to become realistic. Even pay attention to the music you listen to. Okay, most romantic music throughout the decades, this is nothing new, is all about codependency. If you
Oh, and
leave
country
me,
music is the worst.
right, if you leave me, I'll die. And, like you said, oh,
Uh,
you complete me. No, I think I was a complete package when I came out of my mother.
yeah.
But,
Hello.
everything in this world, it teaches you codependency. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, you get into a codependent relationship and neither of you are happy because you're not being yourselves. You're not being free, moral individuals, as Bradshaw would say, walking side by side, looking forward together.
Yeah.
And if that's not your
Absolutely.
relationship, folks, guess what? You're in the wrong relationship. So you either try to fix it or figure a quick exit, slip out the
Well, fix
back,
yourself. I
Jack.
would say fix yourself first because we attract who we are. That's my belief because that's what I've seen, that people draw themselves to the same person, all the time because they haven't grown. I think we reincarnated to learn about self-love at this time because I started doing my readings in 1972 professionally. And so that's how old I am. So in 1972, I looked at the problem there, and it was a lack of self-love. And this is 2019, and it's still about a lack of self-love.
Right.
And I'm like, what is it that we're not getting?
Right. Well, people need to wake up in the morning and say, I love you, warts and all.
I love you. Yeah, yeah,
Instead
exactly.
of,
Or,
oh, my
you
hair
know what
looks
I
like
did?
crap, or I hate these extra 10 pounds, or, this, that,
That's
the other
insane.
thing.
Let me show. I'm going to give another little tool, okay? Because I do a lot of teaching. That people buy lessons from me. I have a list of about 40, and I give them at a really good price, really huge discount. Anyway, one of the things I learned, and this is a tool that works really well, a lot of times people have a hard time looking in the mirror because they want to go into self-judgment. So what I learned is to get a picture of yourself when you were 5 years or under, when you were a little boy or a little girl. Get a picture and frame it and have it right in your bedroom. And when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you're going to do is to apologize if you've been judgmental. And you can telepathically communicate with yourself as a child and just say, have I been fair to you? And you'll hear, like my child said, no, you haven't. Why do you judge me constantly? You're always talking about, well, I weighed almost 300 pounds at one time, though. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to love yourself when you're so obese. And I finally thought, no, I don't want to die. I want to live. And I got rid of it. So when I looked at this picture of this little girl, she said, you've been so judgmental, so unfair. And I said, you didn't reincarnate for this, did you? She said, no, I want to be happy. Look at my eyes. I just want to be
Right.
happy in this world. And so I apologized to her, and I told her, I said, I'm never going to judge you again. And to this day, I don't.
That's great. That's a good
Never judge
idea.
her. And then she started smiling in my mind, and I looked at that picture, and I said, every day when I wake up, I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to say how beautiful you are and how lucky you are to have me, taking care of you. I'm your future, and I want to let you know that we're just fine, and I'm going to praise you every day. And whatever it is that you need, I will be there for you. So I found that if you get a picture of yourself when you were a child and talk to that picture, and number one, apologize if you've been self-judgmental and promise never to do it again, frame that picture and have it in your bedroom, you'll find that you'll make strides like you wouldn't believe. It was the number one tool that helped me break out of my insecurities.
That's great. Well, Monica, thank you so much. This has been a pretty quick hour. So.
Oh my God, it's over.
It's over. We've already done it. But I want to thank
That's a good
you.
way to end.
And of course, yeah, it's a great way to end. Check out Monica's work, her classes, what she offers at monica.com. That's Monica with 2 N's. In the middle, I have a live link right here on site. Moni, take good care. We'll talk soon, doll.
Thank you. I love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Okay, bye.
And there you have it. Today's about relationships. And when you believe you deserve, that's when you receive. It's simple, but it's hard. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. I hope it helped some of you out there. I'm always available, by the way, if you need to talk or counsel. And don't forget my relationship book here. It's inexpensive. It's got all the info you need. And I email it to you as soon as you order it. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening and supporting the Meria Show. Tell others what you learned today. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when it's shared. Encourage others to subscribe today. www.Meria.net. Often imitated, never duplicated. A world of information all in one place. www.Meria.net. Always ahead of the curve. Always on your side. Get active or get radioactive. Subscribe today.